a hell of a lot of people who are in my businesses just now who are way better than me. They're a lot of things, they're better than me at marketing, they're better than me at customer service. And the reason is because I was humble enough in the beginning to know, okay, I'm kind of at that. Why don't I hire for that? Why don't I bring somebody in for that? Because they're going to be a million times better and they'll love it more. I'm not going to try and do a task that I hate to provide a bad service, to deliver that bad service to the client, when I could bring in someone who loves it to deliver a great service for the client.
Hello and welcome to the We Built This Business podcast, the place for UK entrepreneurs and business owners who want to build a multi-million pound business. I'm Daniel O'Sullivan, founder of Red Cactus Events, Team Building Experiences and Shizoo Media. Speaking with some of the UK's most successful entrepreneurs, I will unpack their journey from startup to where they are today. If you want to build a multi-million pound business, you're in the right place. Hello. Today, I'm pleased to have Andrew McGee on the We Built This Business podcast, talking about how he has built multiple businesses. Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. Good to be here.
So, Andrew, let's start by hearing where you are today. So you've got a couple of businesses. Let's hear about those.
Yeah, so a few different businesses just now in a few different sectors. So I have a leisure-based business, which is a gym-based business that runs and operates pretty much on its own, which is good, delivering small group personal training, things like that. I've also then got a training academy business. So we deliver modern apprenticeship programs in predominantly the logistics sector, driving goods vehicle qualifications to employers. And then I also have a property business that's been running for the past 10 years as well, which is residential property, serviced accommodation, moving into HMOs and refurbs and flips and things like that.
And that business is called, is it AME Limited, is that correct?
Yeah, AME, Andrew McGee Enterprises, a very thoughtful name, thought out name. But yeah, just literally sits as a company there for the residential side. Obviously, a lot of property investors like myself had to restructure things when different legislation came in. Stop buying on your own, start to buy through a limited company. So that's why that one was set up.
And let's just go top level here, but how many people do you employ across all those companies and what kind of revenues are you looking at?
So leisure business just now, we've got there's 4 people running that site just now. The training academy business, we've got, including outsourcers, we've probably got about 8 or 9 sitting on that one. Property company, if I include outsourcers with that one, it's probably about 4 sitting on that property, that business. I use a lot of freelancers. I use a lot of VAs, people who have been with me for 9 years now that I've been working with some of my longest VAs. And then we kind of mix between full employment, self-employment through the other businesses as well. Just depends on what kind of structure suits them best as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was on a conference yesterday. I think it was 2 million people run businesses that, they essentially have no employees at all. And the majority of those are, like called subcontractors or, they do work on their terms, don't they, essentially?
I'm a big believer of you eat what you kill. I really like that. And a lot of people who come on to our businesses are given those opportunities. There's great commission structures. There's obviously basic, but there's great commission, great bonus structures. And it really does mean that if you come and present me with an opportunity that could bring us an extra 100 grand of revenue to the business, I'm more than happy to give you a chunk of that, as opposed to just 95, clock in, clock out, and that's your salary and that's it,
Well, we'll get into that a lot more a bit later, Andrew. But let's start by going back to your early days. So when you left school, did you think you were always going to go into business?
I left school at kind of 15, to be fair. I was 16 in the August, left school in the June time. Didn't really know what to do, but just knew that I had a really good work ethic and I had pretty much a solid head on my shoulders. I didn't really try well in school. I loved school. I had a great time having a laugh with friends, chasing women. It was brilliant, but I didn't necessarily study in terms of academically. I was just kind of getting by. I always heard from the teachers, if you really tried, you could be really good. But there was, and I will bring this up because I do think about this often even now. There was one teacher, I had a guidance teacher, and we were in something called, I think it was basically just like a substitute for French for bad people who weren't willing to do French. But it was a certain class that we would go to. We would build sheds, we would market them, we would sell them, we would construct teams together, we would build the employee bases, start to work out costs. It was very kind of entrepreneurial, but you didn't really know it at the time. And I remember not going to one of the classes one time, and my guidance teacher had says to me, "We need you in that class. You're a natural leader." And that stuck with me, still sticks with me to this day. I always think back about him. So if you're listening to this and you're a kid and you think that your teachers don't cement anything, they really do. Or if you are a teacher and think that, and that really did kind of give me the push. I left school and became a HGV mechanic apprentice. So I think we were on about I remember my first hourly rate was like £3.08 or something an hour. And being one of the bigger lads, you're having to carry super heavy equipment. You're underneath lorries, it's dirty, it's oily, you're smashing your hands. And I was looking at it and I just thought, like, this is, I'm probably only going to make about a tenner an hour here for doing an unbelievable amount of labour when I'm qualified. Left that business. My friend, he was a heating engineer at the time, and he said, look, come over here, it's a lot cleaner, you make more money, and it's brilliant. So went over to do that. In the interim of that though, I was always very interested in business, stock market, making money, just other kind of alternative ways. I even remember saving up a lot of my wages in the £3 an hour job. I remember I had like £2,000 in the bank at one point at like 16-year-old, and one of my friends seen it and going like, "What the? How have you got that much money?" And I was just
Let's get going at that age.
yeah, I was just thinking, okay, what can I do here? I set up an initial business called ebook education, ebook-education.co.uk. And it was at the time in 2006 when ebooks were like the big thing. Everybody was getting ebooks. It's kind of like the modern day PDF. And set that business up, bought a wad of preloaded ebooks on eBay, made zero sales, but it got me like setting up websites, thinking about pricing, marketing, things like that. And then I was just always trying to self-improve through boxing, I would say, which I did when I was a kid from kind of 13 to 17. You're always trying to physically self-improve from a health standpoint. You're trying to get better. You're trying to get sharper in sparring. Moving into bodybuilding, I was trying to get stronger. So I was always about self-improvement. And I think that kind of crossed over into the business side where I'm thinking, okay, well, how can I learn a new skill? How can I make money here? How can I structure things? And that did give me the push to kind of think, okay, I want to start my own business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I read a little bit about you before the show, and yeah, you said you had, you're interested in boxing, you're interested in bodybuilding. Did you how did you do in these sports? Were you doing well, and you just decided to then kind of not continue, or was it something that the business just kind of pulled you further in?
So in boxing, I was competitively boxing from the age of kind of 13 onwards. I was 64 kilos, so I was 10 stone. Probably have to chop both my legs off to get to that weight nowadays. But I was 10 stone, and I was fighting and I was competing. I have always been probably health conscious and maybe too clever for my own good, but it actually does kind of help me. I remember being like 15, 16 and seeing a lot of people who I kind of looked up to in the boxing world locally and things like that, who were very what's known as punchy, which means that you've been punching the head too many times, you're slurring your words, your brain's not working correctly. And I was like, this probably isn't great getting smashed in the head 3 times a week in sparring. Like long term, this probably isn't great. So at that time, I discovered bodybuilding, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to make the transition. Started weight training because I was so restricted for so long in my weight. I just ballooned up. I think I put on like 5 stone in the course of a year. Got super strong, had good genetics for it, and I just decided that I want to start competing in bodybuilding. At the time, nobody I knew at all was competing. I'm very stubborn and these kind of things, whereas if I just decide I'm going to do it, then I'm going to do it. I don't need to have a mentor or somebody there or anything. So started doing some digging, learned the ropes, started competing in bodybuilding. So as a junior, I was coming kind of second in the country a couple of times, qualified for the British, became top 5 in the UK as a men's open heavyweight,
Excellent.
and gradually just kept competing. But I think it's again just going back to the continual self-improvement, continually competing against yourself and just trying to get better day in and day out. And bodybuilding really is that is the full playbook for it. So that's why I like that so much. Which led on to the next business.
So your next business. So let's just dial back a little bit. The ebooks business, did that get closed down?
Yeah, that was never like
Yeah.
I was only 16 at the time, so that was never
Right.
like it was never like a limited company or anything. I started that was just sitting there as a website. Don't even know how I was probably going to fulfill orders. To be fair, in fact, I do. It was digital, so it wouldn't have been that bad. I at least set that bit up. But then started buying stocks when I was 18 as well. Officially through kind of a shareholder setup. Started buying like BP. Remember the BP oil crisis where I walked down the stairs in the morning and just seen like oil battering out this underwater camera. Stocks all tanked. And then when I was working as a heating engineer at the time, I was doing my clinical nutrition degree as well. I was doing that as a kind of part-time, so I would go down to Loughborough, I would come back up, I would fly down and be my baby, come back up, do a lot of the self-study, and then decided, okay, I want to set up a gym. It was a very logical step for me, being into bodybuilding, being a real passion project. But I didn't really know anything about business, to be fully honest. I just thought, okay, this sounds as though it's a good idea. I'll learn all the business skills after it. But the first business, that was 2013 that we opened that business. So I we got qualified as a heating engineer, left a secure job on about 24 grand a year, had a pot of, I think maybe, I want to say I had about £1,000 in cash. I had an £800 limit Tesco personal credit card. And I started thinking, okay, this is December. By April time, I'm going to have a fully functioning gym. And then just really got to work with how it was going to set for finding location, finding equipment, starting to market it, if you will. And at the time I thought to myself, do you know what? This will really push me if I decide to set a bodybuilding show date. So I'm going to go and compete in the June, start the prep in the January, and start this business here as well to open in the April. I'm a big believer of the more you do, the more you can do. So that just got me kind of active. And then we opened our doors on April the 15th, 2013 for that business.
You've literally gone straight into it. Like you said, you've got everything going on as well in the bodybuilding side of things. You'd left your job, is that right as well?
Yeah, just
So it's all or nothing, basically.
Yeah, 100%.
How did the first 6 months go?
Probably some of the best times of my life, to be real honest with you, because I was 23 at the time. In fact, no, I was 22 at the time. And I had set this gym up. We basically got a 2,000 square foot warehouse, signed a 5-year lease. We were in 100k plus worth of debt, in order to do it. And I was the guy that had to make sure that we could pay the bills. Now, I would say one of the benefits of doing it at that time is the fact that I was living with my mum and my stepdad at the time. Didn't have any dependents, kids, didn't have any mortgages, things like that. I had a really nice red Audi A4 that I was driving about thinking I was the bollocks basically in the heating engineer job, big shiny S-Line A4. I had to sell that and ended up with like a £400 Nissan Almera, which I absolutely loved because I was waking up in the morning and instead of going to a building site and doing a real shitty job that I didn't want to do, I was waking up in the morning, driving to this gym, going in, putting the music on. People were in training. I was talking to them about training, helping them train, discussing nutrition, things like that, training myself, and was just super passionate. So we started to, with a membership system in place. We'd done everything really, really professional and probably kind of bigger than we actually were at the time. So we had like direct debit processes in place, sign up processes in place, marketing, referral systems, things like that. And just gradually started to grow it that way. I think we were only about £20, £25 a month or something, like super low barrier to entry, but just over delivered the amount of service unbelievably at that time. And I think that as a new business with no track record, that is the only thing you can do, is just over deliver like crazy. This was before the rise of Facebook ads. This was way before like Instagram and all that. Facebook was a thing, but nobody was super advertising on it. So we were just relying on sole word of mouth, people getting results, before and afters, making it a real good community. That was the real thing that kind of pushed it in the first 6 months.
Yeah, and I think that's the best, most exciting part of starting a business, is often that first period when you look around and you go, this is actually mine and we're going to do this.
Yeah.
Now, you touched on something, and you said you were 100K in debt. Obviously, like you said, you've got no, there's no business experience previously. There's no track record to trade off. How did you get that level of, essentially investment?
So the total money that we had, I had, as I say, that was an £800 credit card that was maxed, Tesco one. I think I had £1,000 and another one, and I had about £1,000 in cash. So we had about 2.5 odd K sitting there. We had to negotiate with the landlord first and foremost for the unit. Over the course of that 5-year period, I think our rent at the time was unbelievably cheap. I think it was something like maybe 12 grand a year. So we had about 60K sitting there as a liability to make the rent. Service charge there, of course. We had a slight negotiation with kit suppliers down south, where we would essentially say to them, look, this is how the business is going this month, here's how we can pay you, because they looked at it, it wasn't really a big supplier, it was kind of smaller independent ones, but they said, look, we'll take a chance on you, we'll take a punt. I was obviously signing personal guarantees and things like that for the minimum amount of personal money that I had, but they were basically saying, look, we'll take a chance on you, we'll provide the kit. And I think that was around maybe 30-40K worth of kit over the course of that time period as well. And then realistically, just as we were making money, it was just a full reinvestment back into the business, every single penny. So if we made maybe an extra 2 grand in profit, 3 grand in profit that month, I would look at it and go, how can we make the club better? How can we buy this bit of kit or that bit of kit, sourcing things from Ireland and everywhere else, and then just dealing direct. So it was really just, if it was just by hook or by crook, how we were getting kind of through each day, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think that's the best thing about when you start a business. The thing, you're finding a way to constantly improve that product.
Yeah.
Because it's like you said in the beginning, it's a passion project. You want it to be the best gym. You want it to be the best that you can. And I think when you start a business, you need that passion. If you haven't got that passion, that can be something that really almost holds you back, I think, in the very early days, especially if you haven't got any capital to kind of just distribute to people and employ loads of people and get them to do essentially the majority of the setup for you.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that was the thing that kind of led me on to our first hire as well. So the chap that I brought on, Martin, he's actually still with me to this day, 12 years later. But he came from the building site kind of background as well. Was hating it the same as me, got qualified. We got on really well at college, and we loved training, we loved bodybuilding, things like that. I remember phoning him up. The business started in the April, and I was doing about 120 hours a week on my own. I remember calling him come the kind of, probably about the July time, and saying to him, by the way, I've got this kind of wild thing that we're doing, this wild project, and it's a business, and we've got some money now. Do you want to come on board as a personal trainer? And he's like, fuck it, yeah, and it was just like, one of those conversations and one of those moments where just everything aligned perfectly, and he came on board, and then we just slowly, just gradually built it from there as well.
Yeah, and it's once you've employed that first person, they really add value to that business because you're allowed to do the more higher value tasks, and then you can start focusing on growing that business. Like I said, you were doing 120 hours a week. You've signed personal guarantees everywhere. I think a lot of people that see other business owners often don't know about the kind of the stresses at the beginning or the things they have to go through to get that business off the ground. But you do have to find a way to make it work, essentially. That's all you have to do. And then
Yep.
once you've got past that period. So at what point did you feel that that gym was going to work?
This is a strange thing for me to bring up, right? And I've never actually spoken about this before. I remember when I was drilling in one of the dumbbell racks, and I was drilling it into the wall, and I don't really know too much of what I believe faith-wise or anything, right? But I remember turning round to the back of the gym. We were probably working for about 18 hours at this point to get it done. I turned around and I looked, and I seen what I would class as a full gym with people training and working out and exercising, like visualized it as much as I really could. And I thought it was maybe it was like a 3-second thing, but it was almost as if it was somebody saying that this is actually going to work. This is going to be a success. So I always had that mentally there that it would work. When it came to actually seeing the numbers and such, I think probably within maybe just after the first hire, when the partner came on board, I thought, right, okay, now this is a business, if you will, because we've got a employee on the books, we've got members coming in, we've got systems here, we've got the session delivery. How can we grow and how can we expand this? But we're making enough money where we are paying the bills and things like that. What is the trajectory? And every month we were just making more money month. And I could see that it was kind of growing. If I was to look back now, and see the numbers going, I was like, Jesus, how did that sustain itself? But I could see that within, I would say, the first 6 months that, okay, well, we're onto something here.
Yeah. Well, I think the visualization piece is absolutely essential because if you can see it working, obviously, like you said, you don't know, you actually literally turned around and saw it work in plain view. But if you can see your idea working, that gives you that belief that it can get to that level. And I think a lot of people don't think big enough. They don't think they're going to be able to do it, and therefore they don't. And it's all about just getting it done, getting it out there, believing you can do it, and just pushing yourself forward. This podcast is sponsored by Team Building Experiences. If you're planning a team building event, away day, or corporate event, then check out team-building-experiences.co.uk and state podcast 15 in the comments to receive 15% off your proposal. So this gym, if we move forward a few years, how long did you run it for? Have you still got it now? And when was it when you set up your second business?
Maybe 2017, 2016. I kind of went from that 120 hours a week down to working about 3 days a week. And I was talking to my wife about this recently. I remember I used to work a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and take off a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday every week, which looking back at it, where I am just now, it's fucking crazy. But it got to the stage where I was able to do that and it was running and it was ticking over. So that's when I started thinking, okay, what else can I do here? As we did start becoming profitable as a business, I, of course, then, me being the continual improvement guy, was then thinking, okay, well, what can I then invest in next? What other businesses can I start next? I bought my first investment property in 2014 with the profit from the gym business. So then that kind of twigged my brain to start going, wait a minute here. I bought this asset. It's starting to bring me in monthly revenue, and it's passive. I'm not doing anything. It's with a management company. It's bringing in a profit. Wow, how easy was that? Instead of selling a £25 a month membership, I'm getting a £750 a month rent, and I'm not even having to service that client really from the property side of things. So I started looking at that and going, okay, let's push that. The training academy business that we've got just now, that was also set up in about 2014 from one of the gym members that came on board. I was doing his PT at the time. He thought, this guy's super passionate. I need to get in business with him. Now, Peter was probably in his mid-50s when he came and joined the gym, and I was a young guy running off a caffeine and passion at 22. And somehow he decided, look, we need to go into business. So we started that training academy business as well. The gym business itself, I always wanted to scale it and grow more gyms. We set up the second gym site, to be fair, in 2022. We could have done it a lot earlier. We tried to do it in we took on a second unit in 2019, right beside the current one. And I was like, oh, great. We've got this site, we'll get this second site. In 2020, let's get the third gym site. And then Boris Johnson on March the 19th, 2020, on a Friday night said, gyms will be closed tomorrow. So I'm like, oh, fuck. You know, thank God I didn't put every single egg into that basket, because if I had no property or anything, I would really struggle to get revenue during that lockdown time.
So the training business that you set up, was that a joint venture?
Yeah, so that business was set up to deliver fitness qualifications. So Peter came from a work-based learning background through Skills Development Scotland, SQA, things like that. And I obviously came from the kind of gym, fitness, nutrition area. So he's looking at it going, okay, there's education here, there's your skill set. How can we mesh this together to start delivering qualifications? And then we got together, set up that business, became SQA accredited, Scottish Qualifications Authority accredited. We started delivering commercial level 2 gym instructor qualifications, level 3 personal trainer qualifications. And then we started to go down the route of government contracts. So we then became an accredited Skills Development Scotland provider. We got a contract for them. We started getting into workplaces, so like your Nuffields, your DWs, and even a lot of independents and things like that. I'd say to them, guys, you have either staff here who their qualifications have lapsed, or you have new staff that are coming in. We can do the qualification for them. We can do their assessments, take them through it. Oh, and by the way, we are fully funded by the government. So they then turn around and they go, how much does it cost us? And it's like £100 registration. I'm like, wow, okay, let's sign up 20 of us right now, you know? So as we started to go and develop more business to business aspect of that business overall, that's when I thought, okay, there's arms and legs in this one as well, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess it fits so well with your first business as well. It fits within that existing empire.
Very organic in that ecosystem, yeah.
So let's dial forward again to the pandemic. Obviously, like you said, March 19, all gyms close. What happens next, Andrew?
So when that happened, in the weeks running up to it, I remember my wife saying, it wasn't my wife at the time, my girlfriend at the time was saying in the tail end of 2019, December, she kept saying like, oh, this thing in China seems pretty weird. This seems to be pretty serious. And I kept going, nah, we hear about these things all the time, like Ebola, this and that. Look, there's no way it'll come over here. And I remember getting into March, our direct debit run was, say, the start of the month. We would see like on the 3rd what the stats were and things like that. And I remember that direct debit run coming off, which was fine. And then a couple of people would says to us, what happens if we end up having to close? And I'm like, that's when it kind of twigged, and I'm like, no way that's going to happen. And it got more and more heightened. When the announcement was made, we had to, as a business owner, I had to think of a couple of things. I had to think, how can I still sustain the business? How can I make sure that we can service our clients to some extent, because they still require the services that we offer? How can we service them, but how can we do it to which case it still sits within the current legislation and what's going on? So we ended up, and obviously at that time I had, God, what did I have? 1, 2, 3, well, I had about 5 staff in that site. 6 staff, sorry. Some self-employed, majority employed, to be honest. And we had a meeting, and just before it happened, and they said, "What happens if we close?" And I says, "Well, I don't really know. I don't know the answers of what happens from an employment standpoint." Furlough wasn't even a term that people were aware of in the UK at that time. I remember one of the self-employed guys saying, "They're talk about a grant to keep the operations going, and but you could just pay me that, couldn't you?" And blah, blah. And I'm like, "Well, what about the rent? What about the rates? What about everything else that we have to pay?" I'm pretty sure that that's for that. Um, we can pay you for what you've done. But so I remember having that conversation with him. Naively, he brought that up, but it was what it was. We had to just say to all our members, look, we're going to do this online thing. We're going to try and maximize what we can, and Zoom and setting up online workouts. Do you want to tune in? We can loan you out some of the equipment if you want to take that home. All we ask for is that you keep your membership going, you keep your direct debit going. And an overwhelming amount did. I think there was 90+% of people did. And that was just for the simple fact that we developed such a great community. Obviously, from my point of view, I'm thinking, shit, like it's the scariest thing that can happen to a business owner, because the scariest thing that can happen is your business closes down and you have to close your business. Approaching that and saying, okay, well, your business has to close down. It's nothing you done for your fault, and we don't know when it's going to reopen. That was the thing where I was like, oh God. The only comfort I probably had was, I think about this when when you're in a plane, and I think, okay, if the plane crashes, we're all gubbed, right? At that point in time, the plane was crashing, but every gym was gubbed. So the full industry was closed, that a lot of sectors were closed. I didn't feel as bad during it, but I just knew that we just took on that second site right next door. It was definitely going to scupper the plans of opening another site that year. What were things going to look like? There was a lot of question marks, but you can only do what you can only do. And we had to just navigate through still delivering a service and carrying out what I could from a government standpoint. The only good thing during that time, as I say, is because I diversified and moved into property, I had quite a few rental units that were bringing in still income through that time. So that's all we could do.
Yeah, and obviously at that time it was a bit like Armageddon for a number of sectors, and when your business is getting people together, and that's what you're not allowed to do is there's a very little wiggle room. You have to move somewhere else, don't you? And like you said, you moved online. Love that 90% of members carried on going, and obviously, like you said, you had the property. So is that when you started taking a little bit more interest in the property side of things and focus more on that going forward?
Yeah, I think probably the lockdown time maybe made me a bit jaded for the fitness industry of what to do, what we're gonna do. I still did want to set up another site and things like that, which we did end up doing. But I just looked at it and I started to kind of think property was more of a scalable business. I'm always a big believer in the right opportunity vehicle is the most important thing you can be in as a business owner. You could work, it's the same reason why the janitor may work unbelievably hard 7 days a week, but the guy sitting in a hedge fund could make more money than that janitor within the space of 30 minutes because he's in the right opportunity vehicle, So I started to think, okay, what is the right opportunity vehicle for my skill set here? I developed a skill set that was almost superseding what was required for the gym business. You learn marketing, you learn ads, you learn customer service, you learn retention, you learn numbers. All of these things, I'm thinking, right, I need to really push something else here. So I became really aggressive during lockdown for purchases. I think I bought maybe about 6 or 7 properties during the 2020 lockdown, from kind of March to the end of 2020. So I was almost buying kind of a house a month, if you will, during that time. And I just thought to myself, right, I'm going to really scale this portfolio. I'm going to be in a position where when we come out of lockdown, I'll be in a stronger position, physically, mentally, everything. Started training like crazy. done a mini MBA, really bolstered my skill set. And it meant that I wasn't then relying solely on the gym business, you know. I remember thinking to myself, I think about this a lot. You see gym owners especially, who they're in shape, they're running this business, they've went and bought themselves a Lamborghini or an Audi R8 or something. And I was like, I could have definitely done that, but I took those 30, 40 grand profit deposits and put them into houses, as opposed to getting a 2 grand a month Lamborghini payment, you know, because moving forward 10 years later, I'd have been fucked and I would have had to go and get a job, you know, whereas nowadays, I could probably retire tomorrow and be fine for the rest of my life. And it's just due to smart investments that I've made throughout that time.
Yeah, I love the phrase opportunity vehicle, because it is very true, isn't it? Like it's not all about working hard, it's working smart, right? And
Massively.
once you've found the right place to put essentially your cash so that it can make you more cash, that's what you do more of, right? So
Totally.
tell me more about obviously the property side, what you do now, how many properties you have, and kind of where you're planning on taking that business.
Yeah, so the portfolio just now set just around the £2 million mark. Um, I've got, once this one goes through, I've got one going through legals just now. I've got another one that I think I've secured this week as well. Once that goes through, I should be on about 19 or 20 units, property wise, all residential properties, buy to lets, mixture between houses, flats, things like that. Majority of houses, to be honest. Good stock, good tenants, all with management companies. Dabbled in serviced accommodation. Currently in the process of dabbling in HMOs. And realistically, for me, I had a goal. A lot of the goals that you see in the back end here, included in my daughter's drawing for me as well. But I had a goal, and it was to get 30 properties by the age of 40. And I kind of looked at my dream lifestyle, what it would have cost me, or what it would have required in order to live that. And then I kind of reverse engineered it and worked back and thought, okay, well, what would I need to passively bring me in to get that? And I got to the number of 30 properties within the criteria that I currently buy. And I'm 34 now, and I've got 6 years, and I'm thinking, well, wait a minute here. That 30 number realistically could move to 100, could move to 250, could move to 1,000 properties. So my thought process now is scaling as quick as I possibly can, purchasing as many as I possibly can. I've got a goal this year to get 13 properties under my belt. If I get this next one done, that'll be 3 for the year so far. So I'm kind of behind schedule, to be honest, but that would sit me above the 30. So I would almost have that dream lifestyle there and go, oh, well, wait, I've achieved that at 35. But I am a big believer in the journey as opposed to the destination, because there has been many times where I've thought that I really want something. Like, I remember my first Range Rover, I was like, man, I remember watching rap videos and there was big black Range Rovers with the rims and black. I was like, wow, if I got that, I would have made it. You get the Range Rover and then within 6 weeks' time, it's just another car, you know? And there's been these kind of milestones through my life where I was like, I remember when I wanted to hit big properties, it was like a £1 million valuation. And I was like, oh, that would be great. And I got there and I thought, in my mind, I was like, we'll have a big party, blah, blah, blah. Nothing happened. Once I got to deal 10, I was thinking, okay, well, where's deal 11? So realistically, I will scale that portfolio. I will continue and continually develop that business, because since January of last year, I did really make a push at it to just focus kind of all my time into that. So I'm going to start really pushing that. I think I can't fully say just now because it's not happened yet, but there is a couple of businesses within property that I'm in the process of setting up that will really push things, and will be a far more scalable setup in terms of staff and bringing on a big structure for that. That hopefully should be by the end of this year that I can tie in a couple of those things.
I love the goal there of like you say, what you're working towards, and you've got 6 years to do that. And I think there's no doubt that, like you said, on your current trajectory, even though you might be slightly behind, you're gonna hit that. But I wanted to touch on the almost what I call like the entrepreneur's curse. It's like you said, you hit the 10 properties and you don't celebrate it, even though that was the goal. It's like, what's next? You're like,
Yeah.
it's that constant chasing of what's next. And I think once you're in that frame of just pushing yourself, constant self-improvement, there's always more, isn't there? There's always more to go, always more to get, but it's good to have goals, because once you've hit that, you can then set a bigger one, right?
Yeah, I think that there is the whole thing about, like, don't celebrate the wins too much, don't get bogged down on the losses too much, just kind of maintain an even keel, a kind of level amount of stoicism. And yeah, I mean, I have, it's like if somebody says to you, are you happy? Well, that's a very kind of subjective question. There are times where I am extremely happy for the silliest things. There are times where I am stressed and pissed off and hating things. And I think that it's the same with business. Are you proud of where you are? Probably. If I was to look back at me in 2013, and if I was to envision where I am just now, I would have bit my arm off to get to where I am just now as that kid starting up his first business with an £800 credit card. Am I satisfied with where I am? Absolutely not, because I just know business is an infinite scoreboard to which there is no ending. There is only the process of getting there, the people you meet, the way that you develop as a person, as a business owner, the resilience that you develop, and the sheer durability. And that all kind of molds you along the journey to who you then become. I've said it time and time again, and I still believe it. I would love to die with a £1 billion valuation. And that's not anything to do with the money, because I really think that probably when you hit 100 million to £1 billion, there's probably negligible differences. But I would really like to see who I would become in order to get there. The person that you would develop into, the network you would build, the people you would meet, the journey that it would create. Of course, the legacy and the journey that it would create for your family, which is a massive key, but just what it would take to get there. Like, it's like trying a 1 rep max in the gym. Can you do that? Can you stretch yourself to lift that? It's like, can you stretch yourself to become that person? And I would really love to get there. I just know that I need to move quicker.
Yeah. I think the stat is only 6% of businesses get to £1 million turnover. So, the percentage of people that then go on to do 2 million, and the percentage, it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And the reason isn't it? Is because it's tough, and it's having that persistence, having that entrepreneurial thought to keep pushing, to keep going the next mile, and obviously pushing yourself as well as everyone else to come along with you on that journey, because sometimes you have to bring the team with you to a certain level before you have to bring different people in. So Andrew, I've got one more question for you. Absolutely loved hearing your journey today, and yeah, it's really exciting where you're going, and you've got, like you said, you've got great big plans. I mean, I think £1 billion valuation is probably the biggest plans we've heard on this podcast. So we'll probably check back in a few years, see how that's going. But if you have, if you just answer, if you have any advice for someone who's looking to start a business, what would it be?
I think nowadays there is no better time to be able to start a business. I would say the very first thing that you have to consider is, again, going back to that opportunity vehicle, is what is the business that you want to start? Is that business going to make sense? I had a kid come up to me maybe about a month ago, and he says, "Oh, I'm looking to start a gym clothing business, about specifically gym wear." And I said to him, I probably wouldn't do that. And that's not to deter you, but it's going to be unbelievably tough to try and become Ben Francis and Gymshark. And I know that you think that Instagram is making it look easy, but it's not. Find out, first and foremost, if it was my child, I would say, okay, what opportunity vehicle are you looking to get into here? Because that's the most important thing. When you figure that out, are you able to sit down and sort yourself out first and foremost, i.e., do you have enough money to live? Do you have enough money to secure your current bills? Are you in a position where you can somehow maintain that for a certain period of time? If the answer is yes, okay, great. How are you then going to structure it? How are you then going to systemize it? How are you then going to create operating procedures? You need to look at your business, even if it's a startup and a small business, you need to be able to set it out so that it can go from 1 employee to 1,000 employees. If you're able to do that, then you've got the systems and the playbook in order to grow it and to scale it. You always want to be thinking maybe 3, 4, 5 steps ahead when it comes to growing it, in terms of bringing people on, in terms of how they run it, how they operate it. Because as a business owner, you get a lot of business owners who think, oh no, I know how to do that. I don't know why they don't know how to do that. And you think, okay, well, what's the standard operating procedure manual that you've created? How have you, oh no, I just told them. No, you need to be able to systemize it so that it can run, you know. Another thing to consider as well is you want to set up a business where you are not someone who's just in a well-paid job. A lot of business owners are just glorified employees who make a decent wage. They're still having to put out a million fires right, left and centre. I'm a big believer of setting up businesses that have got layers and systems, for which case you can then buy back your time, get back your time, and then look at doing tasks that are going to be higher level, you know? How can you constantly add in layers and layers and layers? And that is how you would grow a business from kind of 0 to £1 million plus turnover, you know?
Yeah. And I think there's some really valuable advice there, and especially the high value tasks and focusing on that standardization, because thinking back to myself as well, that was one of the key things that changed what we did as well after a couple of years of operating. As soon as we actually sat down and started writing down how we operate and how we could change that and become more efficient, the business started growing a lot quicker. And I think if I did that from day one, it would have made a big difference, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, and I think also kind of having the understanding and having the humble means of knowing that you aren't the best answer for every single question. You know, there are a hell of a lot of people who are in my businesses just now who are way better than me. Than a lot of things, you know, they're better than me at marketing, they're better than me at customer service. And the reason is because I was humble enough in the beginning to know, okay, I'm kind of shitty at that. Why don't I hire for that? Why don't I bring somebody in for that? Because they're going to be a million times better and they'll love it more. You know, I'm not going to try and do a task that I hate to provide a bad service, to deliver that bad service to the client, when I could bring in someone who loves it to deliver a great service for the client. And then that just scales, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew, it's been fantastic talking to you. Where can people that have listened to this podcast find out more about yourself and your companies?
Yeah, so you'll find me on Instagram. I am at Andrew McGee Investor. McGee is MCGEE. Probably most active on my Instagram. I do have VAs that fire stuff on YouTube, LinkedIn, things like that. That's just Andrew McGee. And you'll see me on YouTube under Andrew McGee Business or Andrew McGee Property as well.
Lovely. And we'll also put those in the show notes, Andrew. Andrew, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Amazing. Thank you, Daniel.
So guys, if you enjoyed this podcast, if you could do one thing for me and like, follow or subscribe to the channel on your podcast listening app, just helps us to grow the show. Thank you.